My wife told her friends. I doubt this joke marriage will survive another year. He's nowhere near my level. They laughed, proud of her. I smiled and said, why wait a year? Let's end it today. Then I walked out. That night, her best friend's message made my breath catch. Where are you watching from today? Drop your location in the comments below and hit that like and subscribe button. Let me back up and tell you how I got here. Standing in my own backyard listening to my wife of 18 years tell her book club friends that our marriage was a joke. I'm Tom Richards, 52 years old. Been running my own plumbing business in the Dallas suburbs for 23 years. Built it from nothing, one leaky pipe at a time. September was cooling off finally. I'd spent the morning fixing a busted water heater for Mrs. Chen down the street. Came home around 6 to find Jessica's book club meeting on our back deck. 5 women, expensive wine glasses, and enough designer handbags to buy a decent pickup truck. I went inside to grab the steaks from the fridge. We'd planned to grill after her friends left. Through the kitchen window, I could hear them talking, laughing. Normal stuff. Then I heard my name. Tom Sweet, said Linda, Jessica's college roommate who visits twice a year and acts like she discovered Texas. But doesn't he get tired of all that manual labor? I stopped moving. The steak stayed in my hands, cold against my palms. Oh, please, Jessica's voice carried clear as a bell. He loves getting dirty. Gives him purpose. I swear sometimes I think he prefers crawling under houses to actual conversation. The women laughed. I set the steaks down and stepped closer to the window. But seriously, Jess, said Sarah Thompson, Jessica's best friend since high school. Don't you ever want more? I mean, look at what David's accomplished. Sarah's husband David ran some tech startup, always bragging about their quarterly numbers at neighborhood barbecues. Trust me, I think about it, Jessica said. I could picture her swirling her wine the way she did when she was settling in for a long story. Sometimes I look around this house, this life, and I wonder what would have happened if I'd married someone with actual ambition. My chest tightened. I'd built most of this house with my own hands, added the deck they were sitting on, installed every light fixture, every faucet, every outlet. You could still do something, Linda said. It's not too late. I doubt this joke marriage will survive another year, Jessica continued. He's nowhere near my level. I've been reading these self-help books about toxic relationships, and honestly, Tom checks half the boxes. No vision, no growth mindset. Completely satisfied with mediocrity. The silence that followed felt heavier than a cast-iron tub. Then they all started laughing. Loud, wine-fueled laughter that cut through me like a rusty blade. I stood there for 30 seconds, maybe longer, steaks getting warm in my hands, my heart doing something between breaking and hardening. Then I walked outside. Ladies, I said, setting the meat on the grill table. Jessica jumped like I'd caught her stealing. Tom, she said, too bright, too fast. We were just finishing up. No rush, I said, looking directly at her. I heard enough. Sarah shifted in her chair. Linda studied her wine glass like it contained the meaning of life. The other 2 women I barely knew suddenly found their phones very interesting. Jessica's face went through a series of expressions. Surprise, confusion, then something like calculation. What did you hear? I smiled. Not the warm smile I'd been giving her for 18 years. Something newer, colder. I heard my wife say our marriage was a joke, that it probably won't survive another year, that I'm nowhere near her level. Tom, You know what? I interrupted. Why wait a year? Why wait Let's end it today. I turned around, walked back inside, and started packing a bag. Behind me I could hear Jessica making excuses to her friends, chairs scraping against the deck, car doors slamming. The house went quiet, except for the sound of my boots on the hardwood floor I'd installed myself. 20 minutes later, I was sitting in my truck in the parking lot of a Red Roof Inn, staring at my phone. 2 missed calls from Jessica, 3 text messages I didn't open. Then my phone buzzed with a message from a number I recognized but hadn't heard from in months. Sarah Thompson. Tom, I'm so sorry. What Jessica said tonight wasn't okay. You deserve to know that wasn't the first time. She's been saying things for months. I should have told you. I feel terrible. My hands started shaking. Not from anger this time. From something else. Something like relief mixed with dread. Because if Sarah was texting me, if she felt terrible enough to break the sisterhood code, then this was bigger than one bad conversation over wine. This was the tip of something that went much deeper. I stared at that message for a long time. Then I typed back, "What kind of things?" Her response came fast. "Can we talk?" "Not over text. This is too much for text." The next morning I met Sarah at a coffee shop in Richardson, 20 minutes from our neighborhood. Neutral territory. She was already there when I arrived, sitting in a corner booth with 2 cups steaming in front of her. "Black coffee," she said as I sat down. "Figured you weren't a fancy latte guy." "Appreciate it." I wrapped my hands around the mug. "How long?" Sarah looked like she'd been up all night. No makeup, hair pulled back, wearing a Mavericks hoodie instead of her usual put-together mom uniform. "How long what? How long has she been talking about me like that?" She closed her eyes. "Tom, I really tried to stay out of it. Marriage is complicated, and I thought maybe you two were just going through a rough patch." "How long, Sarah?" "Since spring." "Maybe earlier." She leaned forward. "It started small. Comments about how you worked with your hands while other husbands worked with their minds. Then it got more specific. She'd complained that you weren't ambitious enough, that you never wanted to travel or try new restaurants." I sipped my coffee. It was good coffee, better than the truck stop swill I usually drank. "What else?" She talked about money a lot. How David just got a promotion, how Mark Johnson just bought a lake house, how she felt like she was missing out on the life she was supposed to have. Mark Johnson lived 3 streets over, sold insurance and drove a BMW that was probably leased. His wife collected yoga certifications like some people collected baseball cards. Did she ever mention divorce before last night? Sarah hesitated. That hesitation told me everything. A few times. Usually when she'd been drinking, she'd say things like, "I wonder what would happen if I just started over," or, "Some people get trapped in the wrong life." I set down my coffee cup harder than I meant to. Trapped. Tom, I don't think she meant... No, Sarah. She meant exactly that. I trapped her. The guy who works with his hands trapped the woman who deserves better. We sat in silence for a minute. Around us, other people lived their normal lives. Ordered muffins, checked emails, made small talk about weekend plans. None of them had just discovered their marriage was a joke. "There's more," Sarah said quietly. "Of course there is. Last month at Lindsay Chen's birthday party, Jessica spent half the night talking to Brad Morrison." I knew Brad Morrison. Divorced real estate agent with too much cologne and a laugh that carried across restaurants. Talking how? Not like married woman talking, like available woman talking. Touching his arm, laughing at everything he said, staying close, real close. Something cold settled in my stomach. Did anything happen? I don't know. But Linda made a comment later about how Jessica was keeping her options open. When I asked what that meant, Linda just shrugged and said sometimes smart women have backup plans. Backup plans. Like I was a failing business that needed replacement. I pulled out my phone and checked my messages. 4 more texts from Jessica. The first few were apologetic. "Tom, please come home so we can talk." I didn't mean what I said. "You're taking this the wrong way." The last one, sent an hour ago, had a different tone. "This is ridiculous. Come home now so we can handle this like adults." Handle this like adults. Like I was the child having a tantrum instead of the husband who'd just discovered his wife had been auditioning his replacement. "Sarah, why are you telling me this? You and Jessica have been friends for 30 years. She looked out the window at the parking lot. "Because you fixed my garbage disposal last winter for free. Because you helped my son move into his dorm without being asked. Because you're a good man who deserves better than being talked about like a mistake." She reached across the table and touched my arm. "And because Jessica asked me to feel you out about a trial separation." The coffee turned bitter in my mouth. "When? 2 weeks ago. She wanted to know if I thought you'd fight a divorce or if you'd just accept it. She said she was thinking about taking some time to find herself." I started laughing, not happy laughter. The kind that comes when something is so ridiculous you can't process it any other way. Find herself. At 50 years old. With a man who spent 18 years building her a life she calls a joke. Tom. No. This is perfect. She's been planning my exit while I've been planning our future. I stood up. "Thank you for telling me, I mean that. What are you going to do?" I looked down at this woman who'd had the decency to warn me that my marriage was ending whether I knew it or not. "I'm going to make sure Jessica gets exactly what she wants." I drove straight from the coffee shop to my lawyer's office. Well, not my lawyer yet, but the lawyer who'd handled my business incorporation 5 years back. Margaret Rodriguez had been recommended by 3 different contractors, and she didn't take nonsense from anybody. Her office was in a converted house near downtown Dallas, painted yellow with white trim. Inside, the waiting room had leather chairs and framed diplomas, but it didn't feel stuffy. Margaret came out to get me herself. "Tom Richards," she said, shaking my hand. "What brings you here? Business expansion? Divorce?" I said. She paused. "Come on back." Margaret's office was neat but lived in. Photos of her kids on the desk, law books that looked actually used, and a coffee mug that said "World's Okayest Lawyer." She sat behind her desk and pulled out a legal pad. "How long have you been married?" 18 years. But apparently it's been a joke for at least the last 6 months. She looked up. "Explain that." I told her about the book club conversation, about Sarah's revelations, about Jessica's trial separation planning. Margaret took notes in neat handwriting, asking questions that made me realize how much I didn't know about my own marriage. "Do you have joint accounts?" "Everything's joint. Checking, savings, credit cards." I never saw a reason to keep things separate. "Business accounts?" "Those are separate. Richards Plumbing is mine, always has been. Property? House is in both names. Bought it 12 years ago, but I've done probably 40,000 in improvements myself. New roof, finished basement, complete kitchen remodel." Margaret wrote that down with special attention. "Improvements you did personally?" "Most of them. I'm a plumber, but I can frame, do electrical, tile work. Saved us a fortune in contractor costs." "Do you have receipts for materials?" "Every single one. I keep records for tax purposes." She smiled for the first time since I'd sat down. "Good man." "What about her income?" "She works part-time at a dentist's office, administrative stuff. Maybe $15,000 a year, but she says it's for fun money, not bills." "So you carry the household expenses? Mortgage, utilities, groceries, insurance, her car payment, her credit cards?" "Pretty much everything except her personal shopping." Margaret set down her pen. "Tom, I'm going to ask you something, and I want you to think before you answer. Are you sure you want a divorce?" I hadn't expected that question. "What do you mean?" "I mean, marriage counseling exists for a reason. Sometimes people say things they don't mean when they're frustrated. Sometimes relationships can be repaired." I thought about Jessica laughing with her friends about our joke marriage, about her checking out Brad Morrison like a woman shopping for groceries, about her asking Sarah to feel me out about a trial separation while pretending everything was fine. "Margaret, if your husband called your marriage a joke and told his friends you weren't on his level, would you want to repair that?" "No," she said immediately. "I'd want to take him for everything he was worth. Then you understand where I am." She picked up her pen again. "Texas is a community property state, which means everything acquired during the marriage gets split 50-50. But there are exceptions. Improvements to property, especially when one spouse did the work, can be treated differently." "What does that mean for me?" "It means if you can document your improvements to the house, you might be entitled to more than half its value. It also means if she's been spending joint money on another relationship, that could be considered dissipation of marital assets." I leaned forward. "How do I prove that?" "You start by protecting what you have now. Open your own checking account today. Start depositing your income there instead of the joint account. Don't cut her off completely, that looks vindictive. But protect your future earnings." "What about the house?" "Keep living there if you can stand it. Don't move out unless you absolutely have to. The spouse who leaves sometimes loses advantage in property division." Margaret stood up. "Tom, I'm going to be straight with you. Divorce is expensive, emotionally and financially. But from what you've told me, your wife is already planning hers whether you participate or not. The question is whether you want to be prepared or surprised." I stood up and shook her hand. "I want to be prepared." "Good. I'll draft a consultation summary and start preliminary paperwork. Don't sign anything she gives you, don't agree to anything without calling me first, and start documenting everything." "What kind of everything?" "Her behavior, her schedule, any unusual expenses. If she's seeing someone, if she's making plans you don't know about, if she's hiding money. Everything that proves your marriage has been over longer than last night." I left Margaret's office with a retainer agreement and a list of things to do that made my divorce feel suddenly, terrifyingly real. But for the first time in 24 hours, I felt like I had some control. Jessica wanted to find herself? Fine. But she was going to do it without half of everything I'd built. I spent the rest of the day getting my affairs in order. First stop was Texas Community Bank, where I opened a personal checking account and arranged for my business deposits to redirect there starting Monday. The banker, a woman about my age named Carol, was efficient and didn't ask questions when I explained I needed to separate my finances. Second stop was Home Depot, where I bought a small fireproof safe for important documents. I'd never thought much about protecting paperwork before, but Margaret had been clear. Documentation would win or lose this case. Third stop was my office, a converted garage behind my house where I kept business records. I spent 2 hours pulling out receipts for every home improvement I'd done. New water heater, kitchen cabinets, bathroom tiles, hardwood flooring, deck materials, everything organized by date and project. By the time I finished, it was getting dark. My phone showed 8 missed calls from Jessica, and a string of text messages that progressed from apologetic to annoyed to demanding. The last one read, "Tom, this is childish. Come home immediately so we can discuss this rationally." Rationally, like there was a rational explanation for 18 years of marriage being called a joke. I drove home because Margaret was right. I couldn't afford to look like the spouse who abandoned the household. Jessica's car was in the driveway. Through the kitchen window, I could see her pacing while talking on the phone. I parked and sat in my truck for a minute, looking at the house I'd spent years improving. The deck where she'd humiliated me last night, the front porch where I'd replaced all the boards 3 summers ago, the flower beds where I'd installed an irrigation system because she'd mentioned wanting a garden. Every improvement, every upgrade, every project had been about making her happy, about building something we could be proud of together. And she'd called it all a joke. I walked inside through the garage. Jessica was in the kitchen, still on the phone. When she saw me, she said, "I have to go," and hung up. "Where have you been?" she demanded. "Taking care of business." She was wearing the blue dress I'd always liked, the one she wore when she wanted to look particularly appealing. Her makeup was perfect, her hair styled. She'd put effort into this conversation. "Tom, we need to talk about last night. I think you misunderstood what I was saying." I set my keys on the counter and looked at her. Really looked. When had she started looking at me like I was a problem to be managed instead of a husband to be loved? What part did I misunderstand? It wasn't about you personally. It was about us, about where we are as a couple. I was just expressing frustration. Frustration about what? About feeling stuck. About not growing together anymore. About wanting more from life. I opened the refrigerator and pulled out a beer. More what? More everything. Travel, culture, experiences. Look at Sarah and David. They just got back from Italy. Linda and Mike are planning a wine tour in California. We haven't been anywhere exciting in years. We went to Galveston last summer. That's not the same thing, Tom. That's a weekend at the beach. I'm talking about seeing the world, expanding our horizons. I took a long drink of beer and studied my wife of 18 years. "Jessica, I offered to take you to Europe for our 15th anniversary. You said it was too expensive and we should put the money toward the kitchen remodel. That was different. We needed the kitchen work." "No, we didn't. You wanted granite countertops because Linda got granite countertops, just like you wanted the hardwood floors because Sarah got hardwood floors." Her face flushed. "That's not fair. What's not fair is calling our marriage a joke to your friends while I'm in the next room grilling steaks for your dinner party. I didn't know you were listening. Would it have been different if you'd known?" The silence stretched between us like a canyon. Jessica looked down at her hands, and for a moment I saw something that looked like guilt. "Tom, I love you." "No, you don't." She looked up, startled. "What? You don't love me? You love the life I've given you. The house, the security, the fact that you can work part-time and still live in Highland Park, but you don't love me. That's not true. When was the last time you asked about my work? About my goals, my dreams, my plans? You never said you had any." And there it was. The truth she didn't even realize she'd spoken. I never said I had plans. "Jessica, I've been talking for 3 years about expanding the business, maybe bringing on a partner, potentially opening a second location. You've never once shown interest. Because you never seemed serious about it. I've been serious, you've been dismissive. There's a difference." I finished my beer and set the empty bottle on the counter. "Here's what's going to happen. I'm going to sleep in the guest room tonight. Tomorrow we're going to have a real conversation about whether this marriage is worth saving or if we should make the divorce official." "Divorce?" Her voice went up an octave. "Tom, you're overreacting." "Am I?" Because according to Sarah, you've been talking about trial separations and backup plans. Sounds like you've already made your decision. Jessica's face went white. Sarah told you that? Sarah told me a lot of things, including about you and Brad Morrison at Lindsay's birthday party. Nothing happened with Brad, but something might have, if the circumstances had been different. She didn't deny it. Couldn't deny it. And we both knew it. I walked toward the guest room, then stopped. Jessica, if you want out of this marriage, just say so. I'm not going to fight for someone who thinks I'm beneath her level. But don't pretend this is about travel or granite countertops or expanding horizons. This is about you wanting a different life with a different man. I went to bed that night listening to my wife cry in the next room. But I didn't go to her. For the first time in 18 years, her tears weren't my responsibility to fix. I woke up Saturday morning to the smell of bacon and coffee. For a moment, lying in the guest room bed, I almost forgot about the last 48 hours. Almost went downstairs expecting normal morning conversation and weekend plans. Then I remembered. Jessica was at the stove when I came down, wearing my favorite robe, the terry cloth one I'd given her for Christmas 3 years ago. 2 plates on the counter, eggs and bacon and toast arranged like she was photographing them for a magazine. "Good morning," she said without turning around. "Morning. I made breakfast. Your favorite. We should talk." I poured coffee into a mug that said, "World's Greatest Dad." Even though we'd never had kids, Jessica had bought it as a joke years ago. Said I was like a father to everyone in the neighborhood who needed help with their plumbing. Talk about what? She turned around, and I could see she'd been awake for hours. Makeup applied carefully to hide the evidence of last night's tears. Hair perfect. The full presentation. About us, about saving our marriage. I sat down at the kitchen table I'd built from reclaimed wood 5 years ago. "Okay. Talk. I've been thinking all night about what you said, about me not asking about your plans or your dreams. You're right. I haven't been a good partner in that way. Go on. And I think maybe we've both gotten comfortable in a routine that wasn't serving either of us. Maybe we stopped growing together." She sat down across from me with her own coffee. "I want to fix that." I took a bite of eggs. They were perfect, the way she'd made them when we were first married, and every breakfast felt like a gift. How? Marriage counseling, real commitment to working on our communication, maybe planning some trips together, doing things we've never done. "Jessica, what about Brad Morrison?" She flinched. "There's nothing to talk about regarding Brad. Sarah said you were flirting with him at Lindsay's party, like an available woman, not a married one. Sarah misunderstood. I was being friendly. Brad and I have known each other for years through the neighborhood association." "Have you been texting with him?" The question hung in the air. Jessica's coffee cup stopped halfway to her lips. "Sometimes, about neighborhood stuff. The block party planning committee." "Can I see your phone?" "What? If it's just neighborhood stuff, you won't mind showing me the texts." Her face went through a series of micro-expressions. Surprise, calculation, defense. "Tom, that's not about trust. That's about privacy. I don't go through your phone, because I've never given you reason to doubt me. And I've never given you reason to doubt me either." I set down my fork. "Jessica, 3 days ago I would have agreed with that. But 3 days ago I didn't know you'd been telling people our marriage was a joke. 3 days ago I didn't know you'd asked Sarah about trial separations. I was just working through some feelings, with other people instead of with me." She reached across the table and took my hand. Her skin was soft, warm, familiar. "Tom, I know I've made mistakes. I know I haven't been the wife you deserve. But I want to fix this. I want us to be better together." I looked down at our joined hands. 18 years of marriage, of shared meals and shared bills and shared dreams. 18 years of building something together that she'd dismissed as a joke to her friends. "Do you love me?" "Of course I love you. Do you respect me?" She hesitated. "Just for a second, but long enough. I'm trying to learn how to respect you better." There it was. The truth underneath all the breakfast and makeup and carefully arranged words. She was trying to learn how to respect me. Like respect was a skill she could develop instead of something that came naturally when you loved someone. "Jessica, you can't learn to respect someone you fundamentally think is beneath you." "I don't think you're beneath me." "Yes, you do. You think I'm a plumber who's satisfied with mediocrity while you deserve someone with real ambition. Someone like Brad Morrison or David Thompson or any of the other men your friends are married to. That's not true." I pulled my hand away. Then why did you tell your book club that I'm nowhere near your level? She didn't have an answer for that. Couldn't have an answer because we both knew those words had come from a place of genuine belief, not momentary frustration. My phone buzzed with a text message. Margaret Rodriguez. Called the bank. Your new account is set up and active. Good first step. How are things at home? Jessica saw me reading the text. Who's that? My lawyer. Her face went pale. Your lawyer? Margaret Rodriguez. I retained her yesterday. Tom, you hired a divorce attorney? I hired someone to protect my interests, just like you've apparently been planning to do. I haven't been planning anything. I stood up and pulled my phone from my pocket. Jessica, I'm going to ask you one more time. Do you want to save this marriage or do you want out? She looked up at me with tears forming in her eyes. Real tears this time. Not the composed sadness of last night. I want to save it. Then show me your phone. The silence that followed was longer than it needed to be. Long enough to tell me everything I needed to know. I can't do that. Why not? Because you wouldn't understand the context. I nodded and put my phone away. That's what I thought. As I walked upstairs to shower, I heard Jessica calling after me. Tom, please, we can work this out. We don't need lawyers, but we did need lawyers. Because my wife of 18 years couldn't show me her phone, couldn't explain her behavior, and couldn't love me enough to stop planning my replacement. The marriage was over. Had been over for months, maybe longer. I was just the last one to know. Monday morning, I was under Mrs. Patterson's kitchen sink installing a new garbage disposal when my phone rang. Jessica, calling for the third time since I'd left the house. I ignored it and kept working. Mrs. Patterson, 72 years old and sharp as a tack, was sitting at her kitchen table drinking coffee and watching me work. Everything okay, Tom? You seem distracted today. Just some personal stuff, Mrs. Patterson. Nothing that affects your plumbing. Wife troubles? I looked up from the sink. Why do you ask? Because I've been married for 48 years, and I know what a man looks like when his wife is driving him crazy. I went back to connecting the disposal unit. How did you and Mr. Patterson make it 48 years? By not staying married to people who didn't respect us. That got my attention. What do you mean? I mean Harold and I got divorced in 1987. Both remarried other people. I've been married to Frank for 36 years now. I sat back on my heels. I didn't know that. Most people don't. But sometimes the best thing you can do for everyone involved is admit when something isn't working. My phone rang again. Jessica, you going to answer that? Mrs. Patterson asked. No. Good man. Never make big decisions under pressure. I finished the installation and tested the disposal. Perfect operation, no leaks. Mrs. Patterson paid me cash and added a $20 tip. Tom, can I give you some advice? Sure. Whatever's going on at home, don't let anybody make you feel small for doing honest work. Some of us still respect men who fix things instead of just talking about fixing things. Driving home, I thought about that. About respect and honest work. And women who appreciated men who fixed things. When had Jessica stopped being one of those women? My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Tom, this is Brad Morrison. Can we meet for coffee? I think there are some things you should know. I stared at that message for a full minute before responding. When and where? Starbucks on Lover's Lane. 1 hour. I drove straight there instead of going home. Brad was already waiting in a corner table, looking nervous. He stood up when I approached like he was greeting a client instead of a neighbor whose wife he'd been flirting with. Tom, thanks for coming. I sat down without ordering coffee. Talk. I wanted you to hear this from me directly. Jessica has been texting me for the past 2 months. About what? Brad pulled out his phone. I brought screenshots. I thought you should see them. He showed me the first conversation, dated 6 weeks ago. Jessica had initiated it, asking about real estate prices in their neighborhood. Innocent enough, but the conversation had continued for 45 minutes, moving from property values to personal topics to what Brad called emotional stuff. She told me about problems in your marriage. Said you two weren't communicating well. I scrolled through more messages. Jessica asking Brad about his work, his travel, his plans, complimenting his success, asking if he ever felt lonely since his divorce. Tom, I want you to know nothing physical happened, but something was headed that way. Maybe. I don't know. She was sending signals, but I tried to keep things professional. Why are you showing me this? Brad closed his phone. Because Saturday night she texted me asking if I wanted to grab dinner this week. Said you two were having problems and she needed someone to talk to. What did you tell her? I told her I couldn't do that. That if she was having marriage problems, she needed to work them out with her husband or a marriage counselor, not with me. I studied Brad Morrison's face. He looked genuinely uncomfortable, like a man who'd gotten involved in something he didn't want to be involved in. Is there more? She asked if I thought she was attractive. If I thought she was too good for her current situation. She asked what I looked for in a woman. When? Last Friday. The day before your discovery. The day before the book club meeting. Jessica had been testing the waters with her backup plan right up until the moment she'd humiliated me in front of her friends. Brad, why are you telling me this? Because you deserve to know. And because I don't want any part of whatever game she's playing. I stood up and shook his hand. I appreciate your honesty. Tom, for what it's worth, I think she's making a mistake. You're a good man. Driving home, I thought about the timeline. 2 months of emotional texting with Brad Morrison. At least 6 months of complaining about me to Sarah Thompson, who knew how long she'd been planning my exit. And through all of it, I'd been installing new faucets and planning anniversary dinners and trying to be the husband she deserved. I called Margaret Rodriguez from my truck. Tom, how are things progressing? She's been having an emotional affair for at least 2 months. I have evidence. What kind of evidence? Screenshots from the other man. He wanted me to know what was happening. Reliable source? Yes. He terminated contact with her because he didn't want to be involved. That's good evidence of marital misconduct. In Texas, that can affect property division. What's my next step? Keep documenting everything. And Tom, start protecting your heart. This is going to get worse before it gets better. I hung up and sat in my driveway looking at the house I'd spent years improving for a woman who'd been shopping for my replacement while I worked. Margaret was right. This was going to get much worse. That evening, Jessica was waiting for me with dinner ready and wine poured, the full reconciliation treatment. She'd even put on the red dress I'd bought her for her birthday last year. How was your day? She asked as I sat down. Productive. Had an interesting conversation with Brad Morrison. She froze with her wine glass halfway to her lips. Oh? He wanted me to know about the texts you've been sending him. I watched her face go through the predictable sequence. Denial, calculation, damage control. Tom, Brad misunderstood. Jessica, he showed me the messages. All of them. She set down her wine glass and I could see her hands shaking slightly. It wasn't what you think. What was it then? I was lonely. You and I weren't talking and I needed someone to listen. So you chose a divorced man you'd been flirting with at neighborhood parties. I wasn't flirting. You asked him if he thought you were attractive. You asked what he looked for in a woman. You complained about your marriage and asked if he wanted to have dinner with you. I was just... You were what, Jessica? Just testing the market? Just keeping your options open like Linda suggested? She didn't answer. Couldn't answer. How many because others? We both knew exactly what she'd been doing. How many other men have you been having emotional affairs with while I've been working to support us? It wasn't an affair. Nothing happened. Something was going to happen. Saturday night you asked Brad out to dinner. The day after calling our marriage a joke, you were already making plans with another man. Jessica's composure finally cracked. I was confused. I was hurting. You don't understand what it's like to feel invisible in your own marriage. Invisible? Jessica, I've spent 18 years trying to make you happy. I've remodeled this entire house based on things you mentioned wanting. I've supported your part-time work schedule so you could have freedom. I've never once told you that you weren't enough for me. But you never asked what I wanted from life. Because every time I asked, you changed the subject or said you were fine with things as they were. I didn't want to hurt your feelings. I laughed. Actually laughed out loud. You didn't want to hurt my feelings. So instead you told your friends our marriage was a joke and started shopping for replacement husbands. I wasn't shopping for replacement husbands. What would you call it? She didn't have an answer for that either. I pulled out my phone and showed her a photo I'd taken that afternoon. Bank statements from our joint account, showing regular transfers to her personal account that I hadn't noticed before. Jessica, you've been moving money into your personal account for 4 months. $500 a month. Money I earned that you've been storing away without telling me. Her face went white. That was just, I was saving for your birthday present. My birthday's in March. It's October. You've saved $2,000 for a birthday present 6 months away? I was planning something special. Or you were planning an exit strategy. The silence that followed felt final. Like we'd reached the end of something that couldn't be repaired or rebuilt. Tom, I know how this looks, but... Jessica, it looks like what it is. A woman who's been planning to leave her marriage while pretending everything was fine. I haven't been planning to leave. Then explain the money. Explain the texts with Brad. Explain asking Sarah about trial separations. Explain telling your friends our marriage was a joke. She couldn't. 3 minutes of silence while she tried to find words that would make this something other than what it was. Finally, she looked up at me with tears in her eyes. Tom, I think we should take a break. A break. Some time apart to figure out what we both want. I know what I want. I want a wife who respects me and doesn't audition my replacement behind my back. I never auditioned anyone. Then what was Brad Morrison? A friend. A friend you asked out to dinner the day after humiliating me in front of your book club. I was hurt and confused. I stood up and looked down at this woman I'd loved for 18 years. This woman who'd become a stranger planning my exit while I installed her dream kitchen. Jessica, you want a break? Fine. But let's be honest about what kind of break this is. What do you mean? I mean you want to separate so you can explore your options while keeping me as a backup plan in case things don't work out with Brad, or whoever comes after Brad. That's not true. Prove it. File for divorce tomorrow. Commit to ending this cleanly instead of stringing me along while you figure out if you can do better. I don't want a divorce. You don't want a marriage either. You want permission to cheat without consequences. I walked toward the stairs, then stopped. I'm moving out this weekend. You can have your break. But Jessica, there's no coming back from this. When you're ready to file for divorce, call Margaret Rodriguez. She's representing me. Tom, please. 18 years, I said. 18 years I've loved you. And you threw it all away because you thought you deserved better than a man who fixes things for a living. I went upstairs and started packing. Behind me, I could hear Jessica crying. But this time her tears felt manipulative instead of genuine. This time they felt like one more tool in a negotiation I was tired of losing. I moved into a furnished apartment complex near downtown Dallas that weekend. Nothing fancy, just a one-bedroom unit with basic furniture and a short-term lease. It felt strange living in a place where nothing belonged to me, but it also felt honest. No pretense, no performance, just a man starting over. Margaret Rodriguez met me there Monday morning to review financial documents and plan strategy. How are you holding up? She asked, looking around the sparse apartment. Better than I expected, sleeping better too. That's common. Sometimes the stress of a failing marriage is worse than the stress of ending it. She spread papers across my kitchen table. I've been reviewing the evidence you've provided, the emotional affair documentation, the secret savings transfers, the timeline of her planning. It builds a strong case for marital misconduct. What does that mean in practical terms? In Texas, misconduct can affect property division. Instead of 50-50, you might be entitled to a larger share of marital assets, including the house? Especially the house. You've documented nearly $40,000 in improvements you personally completed. That's separate property enhancement. And given her misconduct, the court might award you significantly more than half the house value. Margaret pulled out a calculator. Current market value is approximately $420,000. Mortgage balance is $160,000. Equity is $260,000. Normally, you'd each get $130,000. But with the misconduct and your documented improvements, you might be entitled to $180,000 or more. I thought about that, about all the weekends I'd spent installing floors and painting walls and upgrading fixtures while Jessica complained that we never went anywhere exciting. What about spousal support? Given that she works and has been secretly saving money, and given the misconduct, spousal support is unlikely. She's capable of supporting herself. What's our timeline? I'll file the petition this week. She'll have 20 days to respond. If she contests anything, we go to mediation. If mediation fails, we go to trial. What are the chances she contests it? Margaret smiled grimly. Tom, from what you've told me about her reaction to the separation, she's going to contest everything. She thought she could control the timing and terms of this divorce. Now she realizes you're 2 steps ahead of her. That afternoon, my phone started ringing. Jessica, calling repeatedly. I let it go to voicemail, then listened to the messages. Tom, we need to talk. This is getting out of hand. Tom, please call me back. I think we can work this out without lawyers. Tom, I know you're angry, but this is affecting both of our futures. We should handle this privately. The last message was different. Tom, Brad Morrison told everyone at the neighborhood association meeting about our conversation. People are talking. This is embarrassing for both of us. I called Margaret. She's worried about her reputation. Brad Morrison apparently told people about the texts. Good. Social pressure might make her more reasonable in negotiations. Or more desperate. We'll see. Tom, whatever you do, don't engage with her directly. All communication goes through me now. That evening, Sarah Thompson texted me. Tom, I heard about the separation. Jessica called me crying. She says you're being vindictive. I typed back, Sarah, what would you do if you discovered your husband had been shopping for your replacement while you supported him financially? Her response came quickly. I'd take him for everything he was worth. That's what I'm doing. Good. You deserve better. Wednesday morning, Margaret called with an update. I served Jessica with the divorce petition yesterday. She's hired David Kellerman to represent her. Good lawyer? Expensive lawyer. Known for aggressive tactics in high-asset divorces. We're not high-asset. No, but she's going to fight like you are. Tom, this just got more complicated. That afternoon, I got a call from my business phone. It was Jessica. Tom, David Kellerman says you're trying to take the house. Jessica, we're not supposed to be talking directly. This is ridiculous. It's our house. It's a house I've spent 18 years paying for and improving while you planned your exit strategy. I wasn't planning an exit strategy. The evidence says otherwise. What evidence? I almost laughed. Jessica, you had an emotional affair for 2 months, saved money secretly for 4 months, and asked your best friend about trial separations. What would you call that? I call it trying to figure out how to fix our marriage. By texting other men and hiding money? Silence. Then, Tom, if we go to court, both our lives are going to be destroyed. Everyone will know everything. I'm not the one who cheated. I didn't cheat. You had an emotional affair. In Texas, that's misconduct. Who told you that? My lawyer. The one you said I didn't need. Another silence. Tom, please, can we meet for coffee? Just to talk? No, all communication goes through our lawyers now. You used to love me. I still love who you used to be. But that woman's been gone for months, maybe years. I just didn't notice until Saturday night. I hung up and immediately called Margaret to report the contact. She's panicking, Margaret said. Her lawyer probably told her how bad her position is. Tom, prepare yourself. Desperate people do desperate things. What kind of desperate things? We'll find out soon enough. Friday afternoon, I was installing a new water line for a restaurant downtown when Margaret Rodriguez called with an edge in her voice I hadn't heard before. Tom, we have a problem. Jessica just filed a restraining order against you. I stopped working and stepped outside. What? She's claiming you threatened her during that phone call Wednesday. Says you're stalking her and she fears for her safety. That's insane. I told her to communicate through lawyers. I know, but she's also claiming you've been driving by the house, that you've been following her, and that you made threatening statements about taking everything she owns. Margaret, I haven't been near that house since I moved out. I've been working 12-hour days trying to stay busy. Can you prove that? My work schedule, GPS on my truck, customer receipts. I've been all over Dallas this week, but nowhere near Highland Park. Good. Gather all of that. We're going to court Monday morning to contest this. What does the restraining order do in the meantime? You can't contact her. Can't go within 500 feet of the house. Can't communicate through third parties. Tom, this is a standard tactic in contentious divorces. She's trying to make you look dangerous so the court favors her in the property division. Can she do that? She just did. But it's going to backfire. False restraining orders make judges angry, especially when the evidence shows the claims are fabricated. That night I sat in my apartment reviewing text messages, work schedules, and receipts, building a timeline that proved I'd been nowhere near Jessica or the house. The violation accusations were lies, but proving that would take time and money. My phone rang at 9 p.m. Sarah Thompson. Tom, I need to tell you something. Jessica asked me to call you. Sarah, there's a restraining order. You could get in trouble for this. She's lying about everything. What do you mean? She asked me to say I saw you driving by the house Tuesday night. She wanted me to say you looked angry and you'd been there multiple times. What did you tell her? I told her I wouldn't lie in court. Tom, she's desperate. She found out that David Kellerman says her case is weak, that she's likely to lose the house and get nothing in support. So she's trying to frame me. She's trying to save herself. But Tom, there's more. She's been calling Brad Morrison again, even after everything that happened. She called him yesterday, said she was sorry for involving him, and asked if they could start fresh after her divorce is finalized. What did he say? He told her no. Said he wanted nothing to do with someone who would lie in court about their husband. I felt something that might have been satisfaction, but mostly just sadness. This was who my wife had become, someone willing to commit perjury to avoid the consequences of her choices. Sarah, why are you telling me this? Because Jessica asked me to lie for her, and I realized she's not the person I thought she was. Good people don't ask their friends to commit perjury. Are you going to testify about what she asked you to do? If your lawyer calls me. Yes, Tom. You deserve better than this. Monday morning, I met Margaret at the courthouse. She'd prepared a comprehensive defense with GPS records, work receipts, customer testimonials about my whereabouts, and bank records showing I'd been working all over Dallas but never near Highland Park. Jessica arrived with David Kellerman, looking polished and concerned. She'd dressed the part of a frightened wife, conservative clothes and minimal makeup. The judge reviewed both sides' evidence quickly. Margaret presented my documentation efficiently, showing that every claim Jessica had made was contradicted by objective evidence. Your Honor, Margaret concluded, Mr. Richards has been working 60-hour weeks at job sites across Dallas. GPS records show he hasn't been within 10 miles of the marital residence. This restraining order is a tactical maneuver designed to prejudice the court against my client in the divorce proceedings. Jessica's lawyer tried to argue that I could have turned off my GPS, that the work receipts could have been fabricated, that I was sophisticated enough to create false evidence. The judge cut him off. Mr. Kellerman, are you suggesting that your client's husband falsified work records with multiple third-party vendors, manipulated GPS data from his commercial vehicle, and coordinated with dozens of customers to create false timestamps? We're suggesting the possibility. I'm suggesting you've wasted the court's time with a frivolous filing. The restraining order is dissolved immediately, and I'm imposing sanctions on your client for filing false claims. Jessica's face went ashen. She'd gambled on destroying my reputation and lost publicly. Furthermore, the judge continued, this attempted deception will be noted in the divorce proceedings. Court is adjourned. Outside the courthouse, Margaret was practically glowing. Tom, that couldn't have gone better. She just destroyed her own credibility. What happens now? Now she knows she's going to lose badly, and she knows the judge is already prejudiced against her for lying. David Kellerman is probably advising her to settle for whatever we're willing to offer. What are we willing to offer? Let me think about that. That afternoon, Margaret called with an update. Kellerman wants to meet. They're ready to discuss settlement terms. Already? Tom, she committed perjury in front of a family court judge. She's facing potential criminal charges on top of losing the divorce case. She wants this to go away quickly. What kind of settlement are we talking about? You keep the house, you keep your business, you keep your retirement accounts. She gets her car, her personal accounts, and her clothes. That's everything. That's what happens when you lie in court after having an emotional affair and hiding marital assets. I thought about 18 years of marriage ending with Jessica getting her car and her clothes. It felt simultaneously like justice and like the saddest thing I'd ever heard. Make the offer, I said. Let's end this. The settlement meeting was scheduled for Thursday morning in David Kellerman's conference room. Margaret and I arrived 15 minutes early, prepared for negotiation. Jessica and her lawyers showed up exactly on time, both looking like they'd rather be anywhere else. Mr. Richards, Kellerman began, my client is prepared to discuss reasonable terms for dissolving this marriage amicably. Margaret slid a folder across the table. These are our terms. Non-negotiable. Kellerman opened the folder and his expression changed as he read. This is quite aggressive. This is quite fair, considering your client's misconduct and false restraining order. Jessica spoke for the first time. Tom, this leaves me with nothing. I looked at my wife of 18 years. She'd lost weight in the past 2 weeks, stress showing in her face despite the careful makeup. But I felt nothing beyond mild sympathy for someone who'd made catastrophic decisions. Jessica, you have your education, your work experience, and your freedom to find someone who's on your level. That's what you wanted. I never wanted to destroy everything we built together. You didn't build anything. I built everything while you shopped for my replacement. Kellerman cleared his throat. Mr. Richards, perhaps we could discuss spousal support. No spousal support, Margaret interrupted. Mrs. Richards is employed and capable of supporting herself. Given the misconduct, My client owes her nothing. The emotional affair was a mistake, Jessica said. It didn't mean anything. It meant enough to lie to a judge about it, I replied. I didn't lie about the affair. You lied about me threatening you. You lied about me stalking you. You asked Sarah Thompson to lie about seeing me at the house. One lie leads to another, Jessica. That's who you've become. The room went quiet. Jessica started crying, but they weren't the manipulative tears I'd learned to recognize. These looked like genuine grief for what she'd destroyed. Tom, I know I've made terrible mistakes, but we could start over. We could rebuild. I studied her face. This woman I'd loved since I was 34 years old. This woman I'd built a house for, worked 60-hour weeks for, planned a future with. Jessica, do you respect me? Of course I respect you. You told your friends I was nowhere near your level. I was angry. I didn't mean it. You meant it. You've meant it for years. That's why you were shopping for someone better while I supported you. I wasn't shopping for someone better. Then what was Brad Morrison? She didn't answer. Couldn't answer. Because we both knew Brad had been an audition for the life she thought she deserved. Jessica, here's what I've realized. You don't love me. You love the security I provide. You love not having to worry about money or major decisions. You love the lifestyle. But you don't love or respect the man who makes it possible. That's not true. It is true, and it's okay. Some people aren't compatible long-term. But I'm not going to spend the rest of my life with someone who thinks I'm beneath her. Margaret pushed a pen toward Jessica. Mrs. Richards, these terms are generous considering your conduct. I suggest you sign before we withdraw the offer. Kellerman whispered something to Jessica. She nodded and reached for the pen. What happens after this? She asked. You move on and find happiness with someone you can respect, I said. And I do the same. She signed the papers with shaking hands. 18 years of marriage ending with a signature on legal documents in a lawyer's conference room. Tom, she said as we prepared to leave, I did love you, I still do. I know. But love without respect isn't enough. 3 weeks later, the divorce was final. I moved back into the house that was now entirely mine, looking at rooms I'd remodeled and fixtures I'd installed and wondering what to do with all that space. Margaret Rodriguez called with the final paperwork. Tom, congratulations. It's over. How do I feel like celebrating something that's ending? Because sometimes ending something broken is the beginning of something better. That evening, I was replacing a kitchen faucet for Dorothy Chen, the widow who lived 4 streets over, when she asked about my personal situation. Dorothy, can I ask you something? How do you know when someone respects you? She set down her coffee and thought for a moment. When they ask for your opinion instead of telling you what they think. When they brag about your accomplishments to other people. When they choose to spend time with you even when they have other options. Jessica never did any of those things. Then she didn't respect you. Should I have tried harder to save the marriage? Dorothy smiled. Tom, you can't save a marriage by yourself. And you can't teach someone to respect you. They either do or they don't. I finished the faucet installation and tested the water pressure. Perfect flow, no leaks. Dorothy, would you like to have dinner sometime? Nothing fancy, just 2 people who understand what it's like to start over. I'd like that very much. Driving home to my house, my sanctuary, my fresh start, I thought about respect and love and second chances. About women who appreciated men who fixed things instead of just talking about fixing things. My phone buzzed with a text from Sarah Thompson. Tom, Jessica moved to Austin last week. Said she needed a fresh start. How are you doing? I typed back. I'm doing fine. Better than fine. I'm doing exactly what I should be doing. That night, I sat on the deck I'd built with my own hands, drinking a beer and looking at the fence line I'd repaired and the garden beds I'd installed for a woman who'd called our marriage a joke. But those weren't jokes anymore. They were proof that I could build something worthwhile, something lasting, something real. Jessica had wanted someone on her level. She'd gotten exactly what she deserved, nothing but her car, her clothes, and the freedom to find out what her level really was. And me? I'd gotten my self-respect back, my house, my business, and the knowledge that I was worth more than someone who couldn't see my value. Sometimes the best revenge isn't destroying someone. Sometimes it's refusing to let them destroy you. I raised my beer to the empty yard and said, here's to starting over. Then I went inside to plan my date with Dorothy Chen. A woman who understood the difference between love and respect. The joke marriage was over. The real life was just beginning.